Hello, hello, and welcome. This is Beverly Fells Jones, the Silver Fox of Consciousness, and welcome to our show. If you're new to the channel, I would appreciate it very much if you would subscribe, share, like, and do all those things everybody else tells you to do, right? Because it truly does help this channel and the information I share get out to other people, because I truly believe that you have been given the power of the word and thought to create the life that you desire. All right, well, finally got within the book for Catherine Ponder's The Prosperity Secrets of the Ages, and a link for the Amazon to order the book for yourself is down in this description. And yes, I am an affiliate, so I'd get a little bit of something if you decide to purchase the book from that link. Now, if you've listened to my other videos, you will know that I've gotten to the point where I do not read to you the entire chapter, but I give you the pieces that I think are important. So the chapter I'm dealing with right now is basically chapter 9, and it has the same title as the book, The Prosperity Secret of the Ages, and it talks about giving from Abraham. So she's gone on, and we've talked about other things that you basically can do, right? You are going to take failure, turn it into success. You're going to bless others for that. You are looking at the ways where you can mentally visualize the things that you want to happen. Even we've talked about the chapter on overcoming hard conditions, gateway to successful liquid riches, okay, and 7 secret attitudes to success. So you go into the playlists and you will find the Catherine Ponder playlist, as well as other playlists for the things that I've discussed. But today is chapter 9. The supreme prosperity secret of the ages is that your giving can make you rich. All right, the ancient Egyptians, Babylonians, and she goes on with the number, knew and practiced this universal prosperity law. Abraham learned this prosperity secret from the Babylonians. And Jacob, his grandson, used it when he left home to seek his fortune in a new land, and he became very rich. Moses emphasized the same principle, and it was practiced by the Hebrews, who became one of the wealthiest groups the world had ever known. They credit their wealth over the centuries to their use of this new prosperity idea. And you're ready for that prosperity idea? You will be made rich by giving. And I know in today's day and age that doesn't seem to be true, because we're experiencing where we think that people are getting rich by taking and stealing, but really people are getting rich with their wonderful ideas and putting it out for the public to purchase. There are so many ways to work from home or from the internet to earn some money. So let's think about this. Many of our modern millionaires have used this prosperity secret and have often ported it out as the formula that brought them riches. This includes Colgate, Heinz, Kraft, and Rockefeller families. Now, I got to experience some of the giving from the Heinz family when I lived in Pittsburgh. I grew up in the Pittsburgh suburbs, but I went to work for H.J. Heinz between my freshman and sophomore year of college. And that was their way of bringing college kids in and giving them an opportunity to earn money. But they also had a weekend retreat or a week retreat for their female employees, and there was one for the males. And we went up into the mountain, and it was free. All we had to do was schedule it, and it just amazed us college kids. We got in for a whole weekend without any problem because a lot of the employees never took advantage of this free retreat. There was horseback riding and swimming pools and a bowling alley and wonderful food, and it was a beautiful place in the mountains to retreat. Carnegie was one that started the library, free libraries, right? Rockefeller Foundation did lots of things, right? But there's some things they did that wasn't so great also, but they gave away. Giving can make you rich, for when you systematically give, you open the way to systematically receive. But when you do not give, you're stagnant, dammed up, and closed many channels to your prosperities. She says, perhaps you're thinking, but I do give every cent I can find to pay the bills and keep going financially. Yet there is another kind of giving you must know about and a practice in order to prosper. When you practice this other type of giving, putting it first in your financial affairs, then divine order will come. You will find yourself prospered in both expected and unexpected ways. Your money will begin to go further, and your financial surprises will come forth, so that it becomes easier and easier for you to pay the bills and get ahead financially. Ancients knew that consistently giving you move on universal substance, forming a vacuum which substance then rushes to fill with new supply. That is the nature of substance. It abhors a vacuum and always rushes to fill it. Giving in order to make room to receive is a scientific method that always works to prosper those who use it consistently, and it can work for you. And she says, the title of this next section says, Cause of Constant Problems. This is a giving universe. You have to constantly give in order to constantly receive, because the universe is constantly giving to you. If you do not balance the art of receiving by giving voluntarily in some good and happy way, the universe will force you to give in some unhappy way. It must, but you give. Give, and it shall be given unto you. This is from Luke 6:38. Works whether you want it to or not. Whether there is no voluntarily giving, something is taken from you. People who think they cannot afford to give constructively and freely have to give anyway, destructively and involuntarily, to doctors and hospitals for ill health, to lawyers for their accidents, legal and business problems, to accountants and to the IRS for their income tax problems, and in other reluctant ways. If you do not give voluntarily of your financial resources, you can expect that body ailments, financial entanglements, human relations problems, and general confusion in your affairs will follow. Okay, this is one of those times when she says that. And if even though I haven't gone all the way into this, I think by now you are picking up that she's talking about tithing. And if you don't belong to a church, who are you going to tithe to? If you belong to some organization, we always said, and they said, well, it's not for charity. And I go, I'm giving. Now, in ancient times, yes, the Hebrews gave 1/10 of everything of their first fruits to the church. All right. And it helped to support the rabbis, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, or whomever, because I'm not up on what their positions were. But it was a tenth of that. But that was also during that time frame when they gave to the temple. It helped feed the poor, widows, right? It helped families. That money went out to help other people. And it helped to maintain the temple. So that's one of those things. And so the temple served multiple purposes. And a lot of people today do not belong to a religious organization, but they get their spiritual food from somewhere. And so giving to that organization, as far as I am concerned, not what Catherine's saying, but as far as I'm concerned, is a form of giving. I've also believed that giving of my time and energy and giving free services and talking to you here on the internet is giving of my time and energy, because it takes time for me to record these videos. So what is it that you're giving? But let's go back to what Catherine is saying about this. The magic number of increase. How can you practice this other kind of giving constructively so as to avoid giving destructively? The ancients believed that the number 10 was the magic number of increase, and they invoked this magic number by regularly giving 1/10 of all channels of income to their religious leaders. Later, the Hebrews were commanded by Jehovah to give a tithe, or 1/10 of all channels of income, to their priests and temples. This including giving 1/10 of their gold, silver, jewels, land, cattle, sheep, goats, camels, and other flocks. 1/10 of all fruit, wine, grain, oil, and other crops. 1/10 of all financial income and all financial assets. And she talks about in Genesis 14:20 is the first instance of tithing recorded in the Bible, when Abraham gave his tithe to the high priest of Salem. That same divine promise of protection that was given to Abraham and prosperity also applies to you and me. When we invoke the prosperity secret of the ages through tithing, 10 is still the magic number of increase, regular, consistent tithing of 1/10 of all channels of your gross income before taxes and other deductions to the priest, minister, church, or spiritual organization which inspires and uplifts you is still one of the surest ways to permanent, satisfying prosperity. One of the wealthiest men who has ever lived, Solomon, promised that tithing invokes the magic law of increase for you. And so she goes on to talk about what happened to her experience. Although I had heard tithing mentioned in church for many years, I had not realized it was a prosperity law for my personal benefit. I assumed it was the minister's way of trying to raise money to support the church. As a $25 a week secretary, desperately struggling to find any prosperity law that would work, I read L.E. Meyer's fascinating booklet, As You Tithe, So You Prosper. This booklet contained many thrilling stories of people in many walks of life. All right. So she talks about one of the stories in the book. And she says, he who said that he found it necessary to tithe in order to get out of debt voiced a truth that has become evident to thousands. A man who was $10,000 in debt, with his credit gone and a wife and 4 children for whom to provide, took a job as a day laborer in a mill, and with his family was compelled to live in a tent. He met 2 divinity students who convinced him that if he wanted to again prosper, he should tithe. The same week that he began tithing, the company offered him one of its houses in which to live. Within a year, he was promoted to foreman. 10 years later, he was free from debt, the owner of a large lumber company, owner of his own home, which was large and beautifully furnished, and owner of a large car, an airplane, and other things on a similar scale. He attributes his success to first recognizing his debt to God and faithfully tithing of his income. She goes on to say, at the time I was considering the tithing law of prosperity, and I was also debating whether I should start a savings account. From a business standpoint, I felt that it was more important to begin saving than to begin tithing. Tithing can come anytime, I thought. Instead, the savings account was open. Everything went along fine for a time as I proudly watched my savings account grow week by week. Then one day my son became violently ill. Only after he had the finest doctors and medical care in a local hospital did the turning point come and he recovered. His hospital bill was more than the amount I had painstakingly managed to place in my savings account. A valuable lesson came from that experience. I learned that if I did not put God first financially and give to his work voluntarily, I would have to give anyway, involuntarily, to pay for the unhappy experiences in life. I immediately began to tithe from my grossly weekly income of $25, giving $2.50 to the spiritual organization that had taught me this ancient prosperity secret. Upon receiving my paycheck and depositing it, the first check I always wrote was the tithe check. This act gave me a feeling of protection and security. By putting God first financially, I assumed my own needs would be met, and always they have been, sometimes in the most amazing ways. The week I began to tithe was truly the turning point for me financially. Soon I began receiving pay raisings, so that my income doubled and later tripled its original amount. It was continued to steadily rise over the years as I have continued to tithe faithfully. My husband and I now tithe 3/10 or 30% of our gross income, and we look forward to bigger giving as our prosperity consciousness continues to expand. So she's given a very good example of how this worked for her. She goes on to say, by giving voluntarily at least 1/10 of my gross income to spiritual work, I have been saved from giving many times that amount to the negative experience of life, such as illness, accidents, thefts, etc. I am grateful that I learned this lesson early. It is one of the most valuable success secrets that I can point out to you. To be sure, there is nothing wrong with the prosperity practice of consistent saving, which I had in mind during the experience many years ago. The Babylonians' great success secret for their riches was that they tithed 1/10 and saved 1/10 of their income. It is still a fine prosperity practice. The Rockefeller family has mentioned their use of this idea. However, if you have a choice between tithing or saving, be sure to put first things first by beginning to tithe first. That act will ensure your growing prosperity so that consistent savings will then naturally follow. Both the ancient and modern practice of tithing proves it to be the best financial investment you can make. And so she goes on and gives a couple more stories in this chapter of From Rag to Riches After Age 50 is the title. Salesman begins to sell again. Professional man proves this prosperity law. Marriage and prosperity result. Businesswoman saves property. Man stops drinking when his wife tithes. She's got a lot of examples here. Now, she says, where you give is important. So it was pointed out that one should tithe where one is receiving spiritual help and inspiration. To tithe to an organization which does not directly help or inspires you holds little blessing either for you or for that organization, because no spiritual contact has been made between the giver and the receiver. It was suggested that the man tithe to the church from which he was receiving guidance and inspiration, that he do this on a 6-month trial basis. Now that's interesting, right? A trial basis? That's cool, right? As he did, he discovered that his financial affairs improved, as well as other phases of his life. Furthermore, his wife seemed to respect his tithing decision. She says, you may be thinking, yes, but I am already tithing to the church where I receive inspiration, and still I am not prosperous. She says this, then check your attitudes to determine why you are tithing and whether you completely release your tithe after giving it. Make no mental demands upon who receive your tithe. A gift with reservation is not a gift, it is a bribe. And I don't know which podcast I talked about tithing. It's out there somewhere. However, that's the whole thing. If you give to get, then this is a business exchange. But if you give truly from your heart, and you want to help, then that's different. When you give your kids money, you give it because you want to. You give them money for lunch, or you give them money to buy some new shoes, or to get something, or you go to the grocery store and you buy their favorite snack, and you work with that. So when you're giving in the idea of tithing, it's with love and caring and not worried about what you're going to get in return. In fact, I'd say give without expecting anything, without expecting to get super rich or a bill to be paid. It's like in this instance, she's saying you are giving because you have. You think about that. You've got 10% to give. Whoa, there are a lot of people out there that have nothing. So they don't have the money, but they've got the time, or they've got expertise that they can use to give. I know this is mainly about giving money, but this is about tithing. And she says many people have the mistaken idea that giving to a needy person is tithing, but it's not. Giving to the needy is often the worst thing you can do for them, since it keeps them from developing their own prosperity consciousness. Until they do develop a prosperous state of mind, they will continue to be in need, no matter how much you do for them. The greatest thing you can offer the poor is to introduce them to prosperous thinking. Your tithe is not properly used for yourself, relatives, friends, or charitable purposes. And that's what she's doing. Not giving to family is not part of tithing. Right? She goes on, and I'm chip-snipping some paragraphs here. Some people give only to civic, culture, educational, charity causes instead of to religious organizations. It is fine to give these purposes if you feel so led, but your first tenth should go to religious causes which uplift and inspire you, or to people in religious work who are an inspiration to you. All other giving is to be commended, but is secondary to direct tithing to the Lord's work. This is definitely Catherine Ponder's take on this. All right. So, skipping on through, and she says a millionaire consciousness. There's a lot of examples in the book. This is why I encourage you to get the book. The general rule in tithing in these modern times is this. You tithe on the gross amount of your personal income. Usually you tithe on the net profits from a business or corporation. Remember this exciting truth as you tithe. You are joining ranks with millionaires of all times. You are becoming attuned to that same rich consciousness which can lead to rich results for you too. In developing your own millionaire consciousness, you may wish to paraphrase the words of Solomon, one of the world's most fabulous millionaires, and affirm often, I honor the Lord with my substance and with a tenth of all my increase. My own barns are now being filled with plenty, and my vats overflow with new good. It has been said that the person who takes up the practice of tithing will have at least 6 surprises. 1. He will be surprised at the amount of money he has to give the Lord's work. 2. He will be surprised at the wisdom and good judgment tithing gives him in using the remaining 9/10 of his income. 3. He will be surprised at the ease with which he can meet his financial obligations. 4. He will be surprised at the deepening of his prosperity consciousness as well as his spiritual life. He will be surprised at how easily he can go from 1/10 to larger giving. 6. He will be surprised at himself for having not adopted the tithing method of prosperity sooner. I would like to add one thing the tither should not be surprised about. He may find himself or herself a millionaire. Thank you for being with me today. And this particular chapter from The Prosperity Secrets of the Ages with Catherine Ponder. As I said, the link is down in the description that you can link to and get her book from Amazon. So be sure to like, subscribe, share this information with those that you believe would benefit from the information I have to do. So as you have believed, let it be done to you. And it is so. And I will see you in the next video.